Welcome into the Bleed Blue segment, a segment about everything with Eastern Illinois athletics. It's part of the Coach Steve Show podcast, so make sure you guys like and subscribe to the Coach Steve Show YouTube channel to get this segment on everything Eastern Illinois athletics. Follow around Apple, iTunes, and Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts as well. Leave a comment in the comment section down below. Follow on X, Instagram, TikTok. Everything's in the description below. The Bleed Blue segment, again, everything with Eastern Illinois athletics. So far, it's been about football. So that's what we've been talking about. So we're going to continue as Eastern Illinois heads into their conference schedule. They open up with the Lindenwood Lions this Saturday. Both are 1-3 and have yet to play a conference game in the Big South OVC or OVC South, whichever one you would like to call it. A couple other teams have played some conference games, but we're here to discuss the keys to the game for Eastern Illinois. Eastern Illinois is coming off a tough loss versus Illinois State. And as we discussed last time, the post game of that game versus Illinois State, there are some things Eastern has to fix, and this is not talking bad about the players. This is not talking bad about the coaches. I firmly believe they probably have one of the best coaching staffs in FCS. They have a great head coach, great O-line coach, great strength coach, great OC, everything. Great tight ends coach, and they're just in a perfect spot. And it's just a coming to Jesus moment. And that's what I talked about with Eastern football last time. It's one thing to say to lose to Illinois and Northwestern. I thought they played very tough against Northwestern, and they were in some spots there. They were competing, and that's all you want when you're an FCS team playing a Division I team. Now they're going to open up with, if you want to call it, similar players and similar teams with the similar schedules and everything, then we call it that. They're going to play teams like them. They did that a little bit with Illinois State. And like I said before, when you hear Illinois State, I think football. That's a football school. When you hear EIU, I think of football and track because their track team always wins the conference, seems like every single year. So they're coming off the tough loss versus Illinois State. They did force Illinois State into some turnovers. It was just Eastern also turned the ball over in some bad times, and it was just kind of like the Illinois drive. The first drive against Illinois State, they fumble going into score. If Eastern goes into score, they have some confidence. You can't sit there and say they win, but if you don't turn the ball over 3 to 4 times, you're putting yourself in a better spot. Illinois State, I think, scored on every single turnover. So I just think that they have to have a coming to Jesus moment. Not necessarily the schemes they're doing, but just coming in and saying that we are a better team than this, and we're about to get into our real conference, and, think about how we did it last year. And I know you never want to focus on the past. You want to focus on now and the future. But think about it last year from winning a lot of tight games. How do we win those tight games? Well, we executed the scheme. We, would block. We would tackle well. We were making another team turn the ball over a lot. Offense was able to put together some drives and keep them in the game as well. And I just think they have I'm not saying this is what they did. This is something that I would just think from talking to the coaches over the past 2 years. I had gone to Eastern, so I have a connection there, and the coaches there are so opening and will talk to me. And, I text them a little bit back and forth just to kind of see what's going on. And, just one of those things where they're talking about they got to fix some things. And I just think from the outside looking in, they just got to fix the coming to Jesus moment. The, hey, we're going to hit the reset button. We're not going to focus on what just happened with Illinois State. And we got to focus everything on to Lindenwood and each and every week, because this is not the same team that we had last year. Lindenwood has had a tough schedule at the beginning. They played Kansas at the very beginning of the year. Then they had Central Arkansas, Missouri State, and then they got a big win last week versus St. Thomas. It's a new Division I program, FCS, and they won 64-0, which is a big win there. They had 4 touchdowns. Clark and Wright combined for 4 touchdowns to, or excuse me, that's for the other one. But they had a lot of touchdowns. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So Lindenwood's not going to be a pushover, and this is the 20. And I'm getting ahead of myself. Things that favor Eastern in this game is that Eastern is 20-8 and conference openers. They are 1-1 in 2 years under Coach Wilkerson. Again, they're both 1-3. They just came off a big win. So the part here is that Lindenwood's going to have a lot of confidence coming off scoring 64 points. Plus sides is that Eastern's defense did force 2 turnovers against Illinois State. They've had 6 turnovers forced on the season, which is really good. It leads all teams in the Big South in the OVC. They rank 28th in the FCS. And this is playing 2 Big Ten teams. They've played 2 Big Ten teams. Kalen Drakeford, he was on both of the turnovers for EIU. He picked off a pass, his second of his career. He forced a fumble, which is his 4th of his career. And they recovered one in the end zone. He's also 6th on the EIU team with 20 tackles. So defensively, I think that they're just going to have to, again, I don't know if it's necessarily scheme. It's executing the scheme. It's being able to get pressure on the quarterback. And it's the ability to not continue to have big plays. It's okay to give up a couple as long as they're not leading to points. But to give up big plays that lead to points, that's the problem. And the problem is getting more guys rallied to the football. And again, this is just from the outside looking in. But knowing the coaching staff, I guarantee that's what they've worked on. And saying that we do want to force turnovers, but we do have to stop the run. We do have to be physical with those wide receivers. And we can't just allow big plays down the middle happen. We can't allow these constant long passes, and we can't allow a running back just to weasel through the blocks and get into a hole. We have to be able to control the line of scrimmage. So those are just things that they're going to have to continue to work on. But if they are able to force turnovers in this game, the Eastern defense is going to keep us in this game. And Drakeford's going to have to be able to force a turnover again, and he's all over the place. A player that I was around for a year, Jeremy Shockey, he is all over the place making tackles. That whole linebacking core is going to have to step up and say, okay, we're not going to allow this run game. The defensive line coach there at Eastern, former NFL player, he will get it right, and they will get that defensive line able to hold the line of scrimmage. And again, it's coming back to, you're going to start playing teams that are built like you. They're not going to be, smaller, right? When they go against the Big Ten teams, your defensive line might be just a little quote unquote smaller than traditionally. And those Division I teams have more depth than most FCS because they have more scholarships to work with. So the defense, I think, is going to be able to take care of itself, right? Before the 64-point game, Lindenwood was not putting up these major amount of points. But the flip side here is the defense can do what they need to do, but the offense is going to have to try to find a way to pick this up, right? Ever since the Kansas game, Lindenwood hasn't given up a lot of. They've given up some points. When they played Kansas, they gave up 48. Central Arkansas 34. Missouri State, which was a close game, 28. Then they gave up none. So in the first 3 games, they've given up a lot of points. So I would believe that Eastern is going to watch that film and say, okay, what has worked in order for them to score points on this Lindenwood team. But the thing with the Eastern offense is they just have to be able to finish drives and continue to have long sustaining drives. Again, I keep bringing this up like a broken record. Against Illinois when they got the ball, they marched down the field and then they threw the interception, which kind of took all the air out of their balloon. Against Illinois State, they got the ball. They marched all the way down to, I think, between the 5 and the 2 and fumbles it, right? They go in and score. This is a different game. They don't throw an interception, later on. They don't fumble it. And if they're able to get a field goal, some points there, it changes Illinois State's play calling a little bit. And then if that Eastern defense doesn't give up some of the big plays they did and was able to stop the guys from catching wide open passes, you're looking at a different game. And that's the formula that they were using last year. So for Eastern, the defense is doing what it needs to do. I know they gave up the points to Illinois State last week, But Illinois State is a different animal. They're competing for playoffs. They always compete to try to get to that championship. They have to kind of, again, defense has put their foot down. Offensively, they just need better play. They need better play from Pierce Hawley at quarterback. He has 2 touchdown passes, and he's thrown the ball away 6 times. He has 6 interceptions. And he's been sacked 8 times. So let's start with the quarterback first. He's thrown 6 interceptions. You cannot have that happen. And when you're turning the ball over that much and you're putting the defense on the field a lot longer than where you are on offense, that's going to be an issue. So Pierce Hawley, he played well last year. I think that in order to take some pressure off of him, they're going to have to rely on Flowers. They're going to have to rely on him to run the ball. He has 255 yards and he has 2 touchdowns. Last week in that loss, he had 117 yards. He's continuing to climb the ladder in that running back career at Eastern Illinois. So this game's going to come down to, on offense, the play of Pierce Hawley and the offensive line. They have a great offensive line coach, but they do have different pieces in that they did last year. Hawley's been sacked 8 times. Now, is that all on offensive line? No, there's times Pierce Hawley could have moved around in the pocket and everything, and it causes a breakdown in the pass protection and gets tackled. Same way we talk about with sometimes Caleb Williams and sometimes Justin Fields, if you are a Bears fan, especially if you're listening to this and you're in Illinois. So the offensive line's got to be able to protect him, but he's going to have to be able to take advantage of that when he is protected, right? And he's just going to have to take what the defense gives him. He can't force passes. We don't always need the big play. And I think that's what Coach Deckerson and Coach Wilkerson are going to talk to him about is, hey, we got to take what the defense gives us, right? And then the wide receivers also have to help him out, right? You think back to the Illinois game, they dropped some passes. So they do have to help him out. And I think if you have a coming to Jesus moment and say, okay, this is who we are, this is our identity, this is what we're going to do, we're going to simplify things a little bit, we're going to really focus on the run game, play actions, and able to get the ball out of his hands quick into, in the NFL, it's hard to always throw the out routes over and over and over again. In college, you can get away with that because of the RPO system, the play action system, and they're able to do those things. But I think Hawley's going to have a career game this week. I'm not, and no offense to Lindenwood, I think Eastern can get this win, but it's not going to happen unless the quarterback play really takes a step forward. The run game is going to be there with Flowers. He's a good running back, and he's going to be able to get the yards. I think Pierce Hawley's going to have to use his legs. He has negative 32 rushing yards. I think they're going to get some zone reads going. I think they're going to have to design runs for him a little bit. Not saying he's this all-time prolific running quarterback, but that's just going to help out the offense a little bit. Receivers, a lot of guys with over 100 yards receptions, but they have to help him out by catching the football. They have to help him out by making some plays, and they're going to have to step up because, like I talk about with Illinois athletics on here on the ILL-INI segment, Illinois has always been missing those receivers to throw the ball up and go make plays, and that's kind of where they're going to have to step up and help Hawley out. So I think if the defense can tighten up a little bit, which they will, get pressure on the Lindenwood quarterback and get pressure on the receivers, I think they're going to be okay, but it's not going to be a cakewalk. They never really blew anybody out last year. The quarterback for Lindenwood, Nate Giants, I probably said his name wrong. He has 659. He's thrown 3 touchdowns. He's thrown 4 interceptions, but he's been sacked 11 times. So if they can get pressure on him, they're going to be in a good spot. They've also played Tyler Kubat. He has 1 touchdown. He's thrown for 115 yards, and he's been sacked once. So they've given up 12 sacks on the year. Eastern Illinois has given up 8 after playing 2 Big Ten teams and Illinois State. So the O-line will tighten up. The O-line is going to be more physical, and our D-line should hopefully feast on the Lindenwood O-line, excuse me, and get pressure on this quarterback and try to see if they can't force some turnovers here. And if they do that, they're going to be okay. Defensively, they got to stop Caldwell, the wide receiver for Lindenwood. He has 393 yards of receptions already. So that's going to be the guy that they're going to throw to. He has 19 receptions. He averages 20 yards per catch. His longest one's 93, and he has 3 touchdowns. So out of the touchdowns thrown here by the quarterbacks, 4 of them, he has 3. He has 3 of them. So the offense runs through him. The running back, Cortez Jones, has 217 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. The offense is going to run through those 2 players. The other wide receiver they got to really pay attention to on Lindenwood is Reese Thomas. He has 98 yards receptions and he has 1 touchdown. Those are the guys that the defense is going to have to focus on. So they have to live and die by that. If that's who they're going to focus on, they have to live and die by if another guy, running back happens or another wide receiver happens. But you live and die by that, right? Because you want to take away what they want to do. You need to force them into doing something. Defensively, they've given up some points, like I said. So offensively, you have to take advantage of that. And you have to force them into more turnovers than you. Total points per game is 23.5 for Lindenwood. So Eastern's going to have to try to make sure that they take those away. Eastern is not scoring the ball well. They average 10 points a game. So that offense has to take some pride and put their foot down and say, we have to score points. They've scored 41 points total this season. Lindenwood has scored 94. Total touchdowns, 5 for Eastern and 11 for Lindenwood. So you're seeing what's happening here, right? Fourth down conversion for Lindenwood is 33%. Their third down conversion is 37%. Eastern's third down conversion is 27%. They have a high fourth down with 40%. So they're going to have to make sure they stop Lindenwood on the third downs. They're going to have to disguise up a little bit of their coverage. And that offense just has to get it going, right? They just have to figure out their identity and who they are and what they're going to run, right? And maybe these wide receivers aren't necessarily the ones that aren't able to get the ball thrown up to and catch. That's fine. They're going to have to adjust. Maybe they got to slow the offense down a little bit. But Pierce Hawley has to take a step back, watch the film of him last year and say, what's the difference between last year and this year? Why am I not playing the same way, right? Why am I not getting it done exactly the same way I did last year? And I guarantee that's what they did. I guarantee after an Illinois State game, it was like an awakening and an epiphany. And I just have that feeling that the coaching staff's going to get them ready, that the players are going to put their foot down. They're buying into the culture of Eastern. They're buying into the culture of Coach Wilkerson, and is going to come out and play well. And it's not going to be hey, Eastern wins 40-something to 14. It is going to be a boxing match. It is going to be punches thrown. It's going to be taking punches, and it's going to be whoever comes out of it. And I just have that feeling that Eastern can get back on track. It's not going to be easy. Another thing with Lindenwood, what do you think of Lindenwood? Again, I think of football, right? So it's going to be a tough one. Good thing, I believe it's in Charleston, so that is a positive. But the quarterback play is going to come in huge. If Hawley comes in and just balls out and the defense continues to do what they do, Eastern is going to come out on top in this game. But if they continue their offensive woes, that defense is going to be on the field a lot, and you cannot have that, especially when they have a wide receiver that's able to go up and make those plays, when you have a running back that's able to run the ball like they do, and then they have another wide receiver that can go get the ball as well. So if they don't do it's going to come down to the offense. It's going to come all down to that offense because defense will tighten up. I think they're going to get pressure on the quarterback. All comes down to the offense and the quarterback play for Eastern Illinois, and they have to come out and play. And if Hawley doesn't play well, there's going to be discussions in that coaching staff of, well, he hasn't played well. Do we start to go to a backup? And so it's interesting to see, but it's not panic time in Charleston. The OVC is a very tough conference. It's very good football. And it seems like every year it always comes down to somebody different. But Eastern has little room for error if they're looking at the playoffs. But I think that's another thing that the coaching staff would talk about is we're not focused. We want to make the playoffs. That's part of what we want to do. But we have to stop looking ahead. This is not last year going 8-3. Remember, 8-3 did not get us in the playoffs. So right now you've lost 3 games. But now it's going to come down to your conference play. And the conference, like I said, you think of the MAC, right? You think of the MAC. Every year, every other year, 2 years or anything, they have a different team that wins it. 1 year was Ohio. You always have Toledo in there. You had Kent State a couple of years. You had NIU. So it's just always somebody different. And that's the same thing with the OVC. It's always been like that, where it's a tough conference. It's not even Power 5. Like when you think of Power 5, and I hate to say this as an Illinois fan, but when you think of the Big Ten, you're thinking of like Ohio State winning it, Michigan winning it once in a while. Iowa might sneak in there. Penn State might sneak in there, but it's always usually been those two. And then when you think of like the SEC, for a long time, it was Alabama. When you think of the Pac-12, it's been like Washington and Oregon, and it's, Clemson. So it's we already kind of know. And in the OVC, it's never been that way. It's never been, it's always Eastern. It's always this. Like, no, it's always been a different team. So they have little margin for error here. And if the offense gets it going and the quarterback play is better, they are going to grind this out. And if they can grind it out and get back to that, just flip the switch like they did last year and able to finish games, they're going to be just fine. So Eastern takes on Lindenwood. That's the keys for me for Eastern coming out with the win. And it's going to be a very tough game. It's a tough game. It's going to be tough games from here on out. And so they got to be prepared for that, right? And they got through the gauntlet of their first games, right? And so now they're through that part of the gauntlet. Now they're getting to their conference. That's the segment for Bleed Blue, part of the Coach Steve Show. Bleed Blue is everything Eastern Illinois athletics. Like and subscribe to the Coach Steve Show YouTube channel. You got the Bleed Blue for Eastern Illinois. You got the ILLINI segment for everything in Illinois athletics. You have Bear Down, where me and Zach Kyleman break down the Chicago Bears pregame and postgame and break down some film. Then I have talks on the show from high school football coaches all the way up to the Power 5, every single level of college, NAIA, JUCO, 1, 2, 3, FCS, everything. Lots of talks there. Talks on here with sports media people. So there's stuff on here for everybody. So check it out. And if you're a football coach and you stumble upon this, there's football coaching stuff out there. Simple offense, simple defense, different videos. So check all that stuff out. Like and subscribe. Check it out on Apple and iTunes, and check it out on Spotify as well. Leave a comment in the comment section down below. If you stumble upon this, you're an EIU alum, leave a comment. Everything else, let's discuss. Follow on X, Instagram, and TikTok. All of that is in the description below. So thank you guys for watching and or listening. This is Coach Steve. We will see you guys next time.